Hello everyone, this is a call to actions, results-based radio. Today is December 17th, 2016. Our hosts today are myself, Kimberly Schultz, and Bobby Vaughn Jr. And we are very happy to have our guest today, Scott, who is a veteran in the telecommunications industry. We are going to focus on where the technology is today and what they are planning for the future. And we'll just kind of go from there. Scott, how long have you been in the industry? And give us a little background on what kind of things that you have focused on.
Hi guys, good to be here. Well, I've been in the industry for now almost about 20 years now, and I started back in the day when telecom was relatively new in the cellular field, and towers were popping up, and they were at the basics. Worked through being a tower rigger, the climber and installer back in the day, and worked my way up through the ranks in Canada, in Western Canada, worked across through the Central States, did a few tours through there. We've worked on many different types of communications, cellular technology, one of the prime areas of experience, but also worked on some radars, AM, FM, the police bands, many types of microwave, which is also the backhaul to the cellular industry. And probably more I haven't even remembered here. ECOM, the emergency networks, that's another key component of telecommunications, and the interconnection between all the services and the people using phones. So there's a wide variety of experience in my background.
Yeah, let's just start with the microwave.
Oh, okay, sure.
To start with the microwave part of that, when you say microwave, most people probably their mind probably goes towards a microwave oven. And in our last show, we asked you, but I'd like to ask you again, would you consider an overexposure to microwaves from a cell phone tower almost similar to being cooked inside of a microwave if you're not safe about it, taking a safe approach, or if you're not even informed that microwaves are even being emitted?
Well, let's turn it to a way that we can understand easier.
Okay.
And I like to use the simple light bulb as an explanation first to get into an understanding of it and then compare it to this industry. There's many different types of light bulbs. You can use a fluorescent light bulb and you can look right at it. You can change it while it's live. The bulb itself doesn't get hot as long as your hands aren't touching the actual electricity. There's no problem. If you do that with an incandescent light bulb, it gets hot. You'll probably get a bit of a burn and it'll hurt. But if you do that with a floodlight, or go from the movies, Batman, remember those great big huge tow-behind lights, they shine up in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar comparisons to a small cellular antenna, a larger antenna, or a microwave. If you look right at a light bulb, it's bright and it kind of bothers your eyes a little bit, but it doesn't cause huge harm directly. But if you were to climb on top of one of those big light bulbs that are towed behind, it's extremely hot and you'll get a bad burn. And it's directional. It shines up in the sky to the clouds. You'll see a scatter of light around it, but nothing that's going to actually burn you unless you're in direct contact with it. Microwaves. Now, this is similar, but I'll get into that just slightly. Okay. People call them drums. They see a drum on a tower. Well, it's a parabolic dish. The shape of it is the term parabolic. So the central piece, just like you see on people's houses, has a horn sticking out, a feed horn where it reflects the energy back, so it brings a signal back to your TV converter for your satellite TV. The microwave dishes have the same thing. The signal comes up the cable through the feed horn onto the parabolic dish where it reflects out to the direction it's going. And normally, with I would say 99% of microwaves, they design it so that there is nothing directly blocking the path of it, because if something blocks the path of it, it's a loss of signal, therefore a loss of revenue. So in general, it's always kept away from the public. If I was a worker and I got up in front of it and I walked in front of a microwave, it depends on the types of frequencies, but yes, you can get definitely burned by it. Depending on the distance now, just like we're talking about the light bulbs, if you're close to it, you'll get burned. If you're a distance away from a floodlight or a great big spotlight that you tow behind a truck, you may feel some heat, and it may heat your body, but once you're some distance away, there is no high energy that you'll get burned by because it disperses as heat right by the light. Very similar with microwave. So basically, to answer it, if you're very close to a microwave and you're in its direct path, there is a chance you could get burned.
I've seen homeless people sleeping underneath, at the base of cell towers. Would you consider that unsafe?
When you're discussing a microwave, it's no effect this way because of the design of the parabolic dish. The inside of the dish is lined with a graphite paint. And the back side of the dish, where the feed horn and the cable goes into it, on the bigger ones, it's sealed with a graphite sealant, so there's no leakage. And remember what I said about if there's blockage or leakage, there's a loss of revenue. They want to control all the microwaves for the mass amount of signal. So same thing with light. Let's do it in another way that we can explain. When you play with your cat and you shine a laser beam on the ground, that laser beam is a very pinpointed light, and you can see that it's there, but it doesn't hurt you unless you point it directly into your eye. Very similar with a microwave. You can see it's there if we can see the signal, but the receiving end is at the end of a laser. And this is how we discuss it in our industry. It's very fine pointed. It goes into some very deep theory if we were to talk about the exact distance and the spread spectrum of it to the Fresnel zone where it expands and then contracts. In general, it is very pinpointed, and the spillage from a microwave is very, very minimal compared to any other types of antennas.
Because they're so pinpointed. Yeah.
The parabolic dish is designed to point to all in one direction. Now, when we look at a spread spectrum pattern that's drawn out, it looks like a teardrop shape. This goes for all antennas pretty much now, whether it's a panel antenna, a Yagi, which you can see on the sides of the road, or stop signs, the rod with the little tiny arms on it.
Yeah.
All of these have a pattern that the RF engineers design as. And it's usually a kind of like a teardrop starting from the antenna where it spreads out. And it's many different sizes of them. The smallest one in the center is the hottest, and the further out you go, it's a weaker and weaker signal. So when it does spread, it's weaker on the widest points and hottest on the dead center point where the desired effect is.
Okay. Now that they're so pinpointed, these, just to refresh anyone's memory, the drums, which are circular, sometimes extremely large, a very big diameter, we'll refer to them as parabolic dishes now. Since they're so pinpointed, like a laser, you can compare them to a laser. Instead, let's just go into the alternative realm just for a second. Instead of them being used strictly for communications or telecommunications, could they be used or installed for other purposes, like pinpointing a possible person? Could they be used to target an individual?
I can't answer that directly, but in my area where I am, and I'm sure in most major cities, there's news helicopters that fly around.
Mm-hmm.
Those news helicopters, they have to broadcast from their wireless cameras out to a place where there's a signal. And they don't fly around with a high power antenna in the helicopter. What they have, in your area, you'll find one of the higher mountains, and there'll be a tower up there. On that tower will be, and this is the way the majority of TV and helicopter news stations work, there's a large drum, like a round building, but it's up on the tower. Inside of there is a rotatable dish. Now, when I say rotatable, it has a direct link to where that helicopter is, and automatically, because as the signal is being broadcast, the antenna will hone in on the desired position where that helicopter is. As it flies through the air, the helicopter, the parabolic dish inside the drum will follow it to keep peak signal the whole time, to keep that link. So can it? There are designs of movable, rotatable dishes that do follow moving objects. That's the best way I can answer that. I don't deal in DoD, but I know in DoD military, they have similar equipment, and they may have purposes that I don't have training in, but this is a type that I have worked in.
Yeah, cyclotronics. It goes back, I'd say, half of a century at least. There are studies of the Air War College, the Air Force, and Department of Defense studying the Soviets having that type of technology, and then when they know that the Soviets have that tech, they start researching it and trying to beef it up even more as a psychological means of warfare.
Yep. Yes, there are different, when you do say psychological warfare, there is technology out there for crowd dispersion, that they can use a rotatable dish and a different type of frequency that is extremely irritating to the human body. I believe there's a circumstance, I can't quote exact time and date, but there's a circumstance where there was Central Park, in Central Park, New York. Some large event was going on that was getting much out of control, and a crowd dispersion unit was dispatched there, and when they sent their broadcast into the crowd, very disturbingly, the majority of people all of a sudden had the desire to use the washroom, because the frequency vibrates the human body at a certain frequency to disrupt your innards enough that they all had to use the washroom, and it obviously dispersed the crowd very readily.
Yeah. Obviously, that's definitely a side effect of targeting, if everybody all of a sudden is having to do the same thing at the same time. I wanted to bring that up because there's a movie that came out, and it was called Cell. John Cusack was the lead in it, and it says there's a future in technology, but not for us. And when I saw the trailer, I didn't see the whole movie. It was basically focused on the cellular towers and the cell phones being the receivers for the frequency that they were sending out, which caused a bunch of people to basically act like or become zombies. And when you talk about, that being used, and all this whole zombie apocalypse thing that they try to push out there, if you've seen it done in real time and all of a sudden people are acting all the same way at the same time, and then there's putting movies out like seeding the masses that, it's just a possibility, but they're already using the technology.
Yeah, there's some serious myths within the industry, but at the same time, there's Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. One of the myths is that the controllers can change the frequency at will. That is impossible. There's set frequencies on all the cell towers that are designed for the cellular network, and they operate at those specific frequencies. The actual equipment that's installed has the component in it that sets the frequency. Actually, oddly enough, in my pocket, I'm just pulling out, I have what's called an SFP. An SFP changes optical light, because all the new technology is operated by fiber optics. It changes optical light into electrical, just a little tiny unit the size of a memory stick. And that sets the frequency for what the tower top radio operates at, so when it sends a signal out. So to change a frequency randomly, that's not in the cellular network design. There are other networks out there that are not cellular that may have some other technologies.
Right, similar technology, but just not in the cellular network. But similar technology could be used for other purposes in directly interfering with one's own electromagnetics either in the brain or in the body.
There's some of this out there. What was the spyware nicknamed fake cell towers? I forget the actual name of the unit.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the city I'm in here, I was looking at where are these fake cell towers.
Yes.
I couldn't find any. But because I'm in the industry, I talked to one of the Western Canada's leading interference technology experts. We were having a lot of issues with the northern border of U.S. and Canada. Certain technologies are not allowed to cross borders at all. There must be something, some barrier, so that the technologies do not broadcast from Canada into the States and vice versa. So in this discussion came up the spyware. And I found out they don't have to have their own towers anymore. Fake cell towers that actually track your cell phone's data and pick up your, well, most LTE phones now have basically an IP built into it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to have any sort of fake cell towers out anywhere, because helicopters that fly over have the same antennas on, the same technologies in it, and they just fly a path back and forth until they, like a farmer on his field, cover the entire city, and the antenna within the helicopter just sends out a broad spectrum that crosses all frequencies, and he gets a ping back from every phone within that frequency range. So in my area, it starts at 700 megahertz and goes up to 2600 megahertz. So if there's a broad spectrum antenna across that, as a helicopter flies back and forth, he can pick up the IP and data off of every cell phone that he flies over.
Would it be possible for...
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, would it be possible for the inhabitants of the helicopter to actually hone in and listen to your conversation or look at your text messages?
Not the people of the helicopter, because all that is collecting basically computer language.
Okay.
It's just simply a data collection. Once a data collection goes to the collection agency, at that point in time, it can be basically downloaded and deciphered, and they can choose what they want to do. If this person has, if they want to look at a certain select people's phones, say there's terrorism in the area, potential terror cells, they can look in certain areas and see if there's any sort of data that may need to be researched in depth. They can then take IP addresses of all phones of a certain area, download, and they have encryption techniques that basically scan the data and look for anything that sets off alarms. Then yes, if they chose to, they could download data and see anything you want. But why would they have to do that? There's easier ways.
Yeah.
Last night, just simply last night, as my phone's sitting beside me, I hear some beep come on it. I pick it up and my camera's on. Is that coincidence? Well, it happened to my girlfriend earlier too. We're sitting there just talking in bed, and all of a sudden we hear a screenshot happen.
Yeah.
She picks up her phone, and what the hell? Because more than just the cell phones and the towers and all this, how can they all actually work in sync in some questionable ways? Look in your apps. Within your apps, when you install it, if you look deeper into the details of it, you choose to allow almost anything to your imagination within those apps, including your phone, your phone's camera, the video recorder, data, audio. Anything can be downloaded, researched, used directly through the phone without any nefarious antenna systems.
I have seen that, and they even have access to who's on a phone call, who you're talking to, and the duration of the phone call, which weirds me out a little bit. And but going back to the fake cell towers out here in Orange County, California, there's a company called Mobility that actually creates fake cell towers. Disguised as eucalyptus trees, disguised even on the inside of a church cross. Flagpoles.
They make things that to cover up the cell towers so that they don't look like cell towers, and they're hiding.
The fiberglass shrouds that hide it, yeah.
They're hiding everywhere.
I called them and they said that it was to be more aesthetically pleasing to the community. But I think there's a little bit more behind that, possibly.
I have personally worked on, designed, installed, modified many, many, many fiberglass shrouds. There's so many different types, it's hard to even off the top of my head, years back, there was a chimney on a roof, nicely painted to be a chimney, except when you open that hatch and climb inside of it. That's where all the equipment is stored. Round cylinders that look like smokestacks off of an apartment building probably aren't smokestacks. False walls on buildings. Go to Las Vegas, right above the just across from Treasure Island, there's this big tall building. The whole top 2 floors of it are false walls. And behind there is every kind of equipment. Yes, it's aesthetically pleasing to the people who are in the next hotels over. They don't see all the mechanical equipment on the roof, but at the same time, that's where the networks are. Disneyland. You can go through Disneyland and you won't see, well, there's actually one spot you'll see some antennas, but other than that, they're all hidden away. Other purposes behind it, well, people don't want to see the microwaves that are really low to the ground. They don't want to see all the antenna equipment and cabling. As far as hiding anything else, well, enough of it's out there already, and people just don't know what they're looking at. So a lot of the stuff doesn't even have to be hidden.
Oh, when you look at antennasearch.com, and you can type in your address and see all the towers, who owns them, how many antennas are located in a certain mile radius.
Whether or not they're registered or not.
It's overwhelming. And I can't imagine that we need that much equipment to run our cell phones. I mean, it seems like there's way more going on than just that. By
my experience, if you typed in on antenna search, you're probably still only going to see maybe 80% of what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's new ones popping up all the time, and there's other ones that are not necessarily considered cell antennas, but there's many different other networks out there. So, yeah, now each company wants to have its own stuff. You're going to have, I'm not sure all the companies you have.
He left the meeting. Hold on, looks like he call dropped. I'll just edit this part out. I'll call right back.
Yeah, it's looking at, there's 142 towers in a 4-mile radius. We are right now. 142 towers. I like to start getting into this 5G stuff too.
All right, looks like you're back. You there?
Well, speaking of cell networks.
Wow, that was interesting.
Yeah, I'll just edit that part out. I'll edit this part out, but yeah, speaking of cell networks.
Yeah. I was saying about how many of them that are out there, and each customer wants to have his own. If you got AT&T, they will have an entire nation network of cell towers. Right beside them is going to be VoiceStream. They will have their entire network, and so on and so forth. T-Mobile, I don't know, you name them. They're all out there. And you can look online, go to any place on the encyclopedia, on Wikipedia, and you'll see how many. It's just a ridiculous amount. But what makes the world go round? Money.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to want to build their own network. Therefore, they have to have their own tower, their own antenna. And in some governments, they are forcing people who are tower owners mandatorily to allow co-locates. So you'll have both AT&T and VoiceStream and T-Mobile all on the same tower.
Yep.
And you'll see multiple different boom levels on the same tower. Still, all the networks are out there, and each company, for me in my area, is Rogers Wireless. Now, within Rogers, there's multiple different bandwidths, 700, 850, 1900, 2100, 2600.
Yeah.
Each of them is a frequency layer, all within one person's network. And then you have, I'll say, right off my area again, probably 5 different networks. Each network's going to have multi-layers. So yeah, it becomes a lot of frequency out there, right?
Yeah, and you could compare those frequencies to colors, right? They're different layers of frequencies, I guess, and then you could kind of compare those to the layers of a rainbow, except they don't interfere with each other.
You get all the different colors out there. From our visible spectrum, we can see gazillions of different colors, different shades. Well, if I can see, looking at this picture in front of me, white, red, green, brown, all those colors, they don't intermingle and interfere with each other because I can visibly see them all. Same as sound waves. You can hear different tones of your voice. All this stuff is all the same type, but different layers. So the cell network, same thing. All the different layers into it, and all of them broadcast, they don't interfere with each other. But outside of just cellular, like sound, there can be some harmonics.
Mm-hmm.
When 2 layers do cross, there can be some harmonic interference in here. For us, we call this PIM, passive intermodulation. So every time a network is built, it has to be tested. And each frequency has to be tested that there's no PIM within that system. So we'll hook up a very expensive unit to it, power it up, and it basically is an electrical RF generator, and it tests if there's any faults within the cabling network to the antenna. And if there's any reflection back from the outside, back into that antenna, and it will tell us by a numbering unit system if there's any bad interference coming back into the antenna.
Could that create some strange sounds that we could actually hear?
If it creates sound, it wouldn't be in the audible frequency.
Yeah, because I understand, using an electric guitar and the feedback coming from the amp, when you working with feedback, bouncing back and forth, you can really create some strange sounds. So I think that, yeah, it would be in the audio zone of the human ears. That would be kind of a strange sound.
If we could hear the frequencies that are being generated, we would probably be deaf because there is so much of it out there. And the same thing, if we could visibly see it, it would be very overwhelming. If we could visibly see all the different microwave paths that are going through the air and the antenna systems, I wish I could create some glasses for that, but at the same time, I'm afraid to.
Who's to say that the Defense Department hasn't already?
That would be interesting. I did a little build one time. People do a wireline to your house. They do a Wi-Fi network in your house. But if your neighbors down the road have something on a similar frequency and they crank up the power, it'll kill your Wi-Fi. So what someone does to find this, I built an antenna connected to a unit called the sweep gear. The sweep gear runs a sweep test through many different frequencies, and I can go into it and set what I want on it. So I set it within a bandwidth of what the Wi-Fi would be, quite a bit lower and quite a bit higher, and then you drive down the road and basically have this by your car, considered drive testing, and once your screen shows a big spike on it or the spike grows, you're coming to someone's antenna that is cranked too high, too hot, and you can visibly see it on the screen. It's kind of interesting when you get to play with the sweep gear and change the frequencies to your settings. It has to be specifically calibrated, but the screen actually shows, like a heartbeat, the interference that's out in the air.
Yeah. Well, speaking of advanced tech, let's move on to some advanced tech, kind of where the telecommunications is going. I have been noticing lately a lot of road work and new fiber optic networks laid out, and there is a separate tube network under our feet specifically for telecommunications. And do you think that this new layout that I've been seeing is part of the new layout to start introducing autonomy and autonomous vehicles onto our roadways, or how would we pave the way for that? What could we expect as people to see out on the roads to know that they're installing hardware and technology necessary for the autonomous cars?
Okay, I'll step back about 3 months ago. I was changing jobs. I was a construction manager overseeing a large build in my area in Western Canada. I was looking for new jobs. One of them was for one of the network providers. And I know these people fairly well. And so in discussing with them the possibility of working for them, the job would have been for, and I'll openly say it, the Falcon Project. What that is just a name to cover whatever work they're doing. But the work they're doing is building fiber networks to all cities they can possibly reach, except for extreme mountainous areas. And the fiber network is a big backbone system that is trenched alongside highways, run through fields, and main trunk lines The backbone lines will come to cities, and once it reaches each city, it will branch out and goes to major breakout points. Then it can, if the homeowner chooses, run fiber directly to the house. Fiber to the home is something that's been around for a little while, but it's really ramping up in the last year. Not only fiber to the home is that this is one step to the future. I thought, oh, this is a whole network. This is cool. It's going to be fiber to the home. Everyone has super high speed. Well, that's only one layer of the future builds. Fiber to the home brings extreme high-speed networks to every household who chooses this for phone, data, TV, or any other service which I can't even imagine yet that'll be coming to the house. The second network that is being tested is the 5G network, the wireless band of the same type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And each of them is going to have very close to the same speeds. Differences are fiber to the home is a physically structured network that can bring data speeds of probably, what are they testing for, 10 gigabytes a second to each household.
Mm.
Now, if you look at the cards that you put in your cameras, and you have 10 gigabytes of photos, then you try and download this into your computer. 10 gigabytes is a pretty big piece of data, and it takes 30, 40 seconds to download. But if they can have a wireless speed of 10 gigabytes a second, that's enough to stream movies, do security, entire automation at a steady streaming speed. It's kind of ridiculous. On the wireless sector, I was involved in some of the testing, and I saw wireless data transfer speeds at purely theoretical because it was a perfect scenario test where they did 29.7 some gigabytes per second. Now, if you buy a 32 gig card, that's a pretty large data card. I just have to put it into that so we can actually understand it. And if you could download a 32 gig data card every single second of every minute of every hour of every day, I don't know what that works out to, but it works out to a whole bunch.
Well, I mean, red flags for me, Scott, really are that all of this is, they get us addicted to this technology so that we're constantly tethered to our phone or our computer or some form of technology, like the kids today and the Pokemon and all this stuff. And they have the ability to collect data on us, know where we are. You know, if they decide that we are a threat in some way, they can just, you know, hone in and read our data and what have you. In the name of convenience and our addiction to this technology and how fast they're moving it, and then you hear about the smart tech and how the TVs have two-way, they can actually see into your home. I mean, it just sounds like an awful lot of surveillance is available if they want it, and it's a big red flag for me. So
it's definitely red flag. So when you mentioned Pokemon, that's something to me that kind of alarmed me at first when I heard about it. What do you do? Everyone has their own freedom of choice, but the fact that it sees where you are, when you go to a specific GPS coordinates, you pick up your little character, whatever it is at these places, it registers you are there. The same with so many others that have GPS built into the app. It registers where you are all the time. Again, of course, red flags to me as well. But the surveillance, the mass amount of surveillance is probably far beyond what most people understand.
mm-hmm.
Most definitely. And 5G, I mean, this is what we're seeing with 5G. Would you say, first of all, that 5G is here right now?
It's beginning. It's beginning in the wireless sector. In the hardwired, they're getting close to the speeds that are decided as what creates it as being 5G. If you can get over or equal to and greater than 1 gigabyte a second, it will be considered into the range of 5G, I believe. But these parameters are changing probably more than I know, because this happens all the time. There's upgrades and changes to the parameters, but 5G is being tested in some countries. I think in Japan it's operating. China, they're getting this rolling. For the Western world, it's being tested. And one of the things about the 5G that I noticed that I raised a bit of a stink about was the design of it. I don't like the design of it. And I've been exposed, overexposed. I had RF burns. I've been around this stuff for enough years that I know how this works quite well. And when I see the antenna, it's prototype, of course, so it may be different. The radio and the antenna are built all in one. The antenna broadcast was basically open waveguide ports broadcasting a flood of 28 gigahertz frequency, and that's in the microwave band. 28 gig is a higher communication band than usual. It's well outside of the cellular band. So this is why the G comes in when you say 5G. Each one of these is a new generation. 3G network operates with 3G phones. 4G network is on 4G frequencies. 5G is on its own entire frequency network. And at a 28 gigahertz being tested within the microwave band of open ports of a flood of that frequency, that's something I've never seen before. Each carrier is probably going to have his own frequencies, but its majority of it is all in a very high range. And if they're going to be getting these speeds, the higher the frequency, the shorter the distance of broadcast. The 700 megahertz for cellular is very good because it penetrates through buildings, through forests, and travels a long range. But it doesn't have huge capacity. Whereas the higher bands of cellular, 23, 25, 26, is a shorter range but a very high capacity. Now, if we're going to the gigahertz range, 28 gigahertz, the capacity is enormous. Like we've shown, they were getting at 29, almost 30 gigabytes a second.
How many?
Capacity is 29 to 30 gigabytes per second.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Right. Yeah. I just pulled up a DARPA document, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency document, 100 gigabytes per second radio frequency backbone, 100G. This was by a program manager for the Strategic Technology Office, Dr. Richard W. Ridgway, in 2013, where they outline communications between drones, ship cruisers, men on the battlefield, all types of just different machines, many being above the clouds. But could you even imagine what 100 gigabytes per second would look like, or how?
I would expect right off the bat that's going to be probably in the high microwave range in the K-band. Because the K-band will penetrate through, and you can use it at a much higher rate. And that's going to be basically within the microwave spectrum, and it'll probably be more point-to-point.
Yeah.
Now, the operations to allow that to work at that range, you have to have such ridiculously fast processors and a large amount of processors. The power behind it, as in AC power to operate this, is huge. The coolers behind it to cool the processing units are large. So the whole operating system of it is pretty hefty. And this is why it's hard to take a communication system like that and make it public, because there has to be so many cells, as you can look in antenna search, how many are out there, to make a 100 gigahertz system like DARPA has public would cost way too much. Although for military purposes, it has its specific purpose and usage on this.
I don't think I'd want to be exposed to that, but given the from what you were saying, all of the points, all the detailed points of receivers and emitters, looks like they have actually just like you said in the helicopters, the helicopter actually being an antenna, having antennas attached to it, that they have drones that act as flying antennas to beam the intelligence down on the inhabitants within the machine, or just on the ground or in the sea, whatever. But that's pretty sophisticated, I guess. I'm not an expert, but there's definitely a lot of technology that we don't know about, a lot of it being used for military. And going back to frequencies, again, the Air Force has been involved, quite a bit. There are different sub-committees and sub-programs within these units, so to speak, like the Air Force. There's Air Force intelligence sectors, you name it. But as a sub unit within the Air Force, there's a program called Air Force 2025, and within it they have a few documents, a little over 20, and this one being called Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. So now we're going into weather modification when using frequencies and communications as well. But as a part of this, there is a section in this document called Communications Dominance via Ionospheric Modification. And I'm just going to read here a little bit of what it says. Quote, modification of the ionosphere to enhance or disrupt communications has recently become the subject of active research. According to Lewis M. Duncan and Robert L. Schoen, the former Soviet Union conducted theoretical and experimental research in this area at a level considerably greater than comparable programs in the West. This is a strong motivation for this research because, well, you see here, the Cold War was never even stopped, really. I mean, they've really just been bouncing the technology back and forth and trying to outdo each other. But there is a strong motivation for this research because induced ionospheric modifications may influence or even disrupt the operation of radio systems relying on propagation through the modified region. The controlled generation or accelerated dissipation of ionospheric disturbances may be used to produce new propagation paths, otherwise unavailable, appropriate for selected RF missions. A number of methods have been explored or proposed to modify the ionosphere, including injection of chemical vapors and heating or charging via electromagnetic radiation or particle beams, such as ions, neutral particles, X-rays, MeV particles, and energetic electrons. The MeV is capital M, lowercase e, and then capital V. So we see here that introducing different frequencies and different particles and partners with frequencies can jam or increase communications. Is that something you're familiar with?
I've heard a lot about this. I can't say I worked on it hands-on for my experience, but very very interestingly, there's related topics. When people put aluminum in the air, or carbon dioxide, or whatever the particle is going to be in here, there's definitely going to be some kind of response. There's a reflective capability. Put it this way: cellular, microwave, radar, almost all of those, the back panel of it is an aluminum sheet. The aluminum sheet is designed as being a reflector to send all signal forward. So if there was this particle in the sky, there's a good chance it could be a reflector to reflect back down. If on the front of an antenna you put any reflective spray paint, there's something called Galvacon. It's a galvanizing compound, and RF does not like it. If that gets on the antenna, it will have a reflection enough that it'll cause alarms, even small amounts. So I can see, in theory, the same would take effect if there was particles in the ionosphere. They would basically work when great dispersion. In theory, it could work as a reflector. There's another unit for microwaves. When we shoot a microwave through the air, but we can't see our designed target, we build a passive reflector. It's a large panel, remember like the old drive-in theaters? A giant billboard. And on that billboard, the surface of it is a fabric that's aluminum. And that aluminum reflects the signal well enough that when a microwave beam can be shot 30 miles, hit that passive reflector, which is turned on enough of an angle and down tilted just the exact degree, it can hit that passive reflector and shoot back down into the valley to a chosen city, and the signal can be received there. And if this can be done on Earth, it can basically, I think, would be the same theory.
I do too, depending on if you're beaming from ground level or if you're beaming from above the cloud of the dispersed aluminum. So communications could definitely be enhanced if you were sending communications via satellite or aircraft above these aluminum clouds. It would kind of be like a speedboat riding a wave, kind of.
From the northern part, I know with CB radios, with the old school technology, a CB radio, on a heavily clouded night, people from Vancouver, British Columbia could talk on their CB radios and pick up signal all the way down to San Francisco, because at a high power antenna, it would send the signal out, which would bounce off the water, bounce off the underside of the cloud, back and forth numerous times, and it would be channeled all the way down. Ham radios can do the same thing. They have the reflected response. It basically bounces off the sky and off the water, and this is how ham radios can get a very, very long distance communication. If we take that same theory and put a lot more power to it, well, if I think of an antenna that has a whole lot of power, the first thing that comes to mind is the one in Alaska, the HARP facility in Alaska. The antenna they have puts out a few billion watts, as opposed to cellulars, which puts out just a few watts here and there. So, yeah, they could probably get a lot of further distance off theirs.
Getting into that, the weather modification, we were looking at the website weathermodification.com, and they have numerous clients and projects listed on their website, all over the world, and a good amount going on in the United States. I haven't researched this website, for very much, but there is a lot going on, and we see these storms and such. For instance, California, it seems like every time we're supposed to get rain, we get heavy sprays of particles, sometimes to the point where you can't even see through. It just becomes a complete whiteout, and it's not clouds. It is absolutely spraying of materials, and we know the aluminum, barium, and strontium are a couple of those. And then we don't get rain. So it's almost like they drought us here. And then you see other places who have experienced extreme weather the opposite direction, where they're completely flooded, and then storms just stall. And so knowing that they have the abilities to do that, to modify the weather, they have numerous projects out there. You wonder, exactly what else are they doing with these chemicals, as far as manipulating things through frequency.
Well, a lot of what we know, a lot of what we see, is civilian technology.
Mm-hmm.
A majority of civilian technology that comes out, as in the cell phone or the Bluetooth or you name it, comes from an original design that was probably done for the military.
Yeah.
What we see with the Weather Modification Inc., what they do, and they are very public about, is a majority of the use is for silver nitrate or carbon dioxide, aka dry ice, where they can modify the weather. Alberta has one of the very leading programs from Weather Modification Inc. They contract out to a place in Calgary, and they use it there to mitigate the large amount of hail they have, because being in the central prairies from the Rocky Mountains across, there's large amount of farmers who have huge crops, and the wheat being one of the big ones that they ship around the world. If there's a large hailstorms that come through and destroy the crops, well, that's a huge dollar factor that's being lost. And all the car sales lots. In 2012, or prior to that, I think it was 2010, there were some hailstorms that came through and annihilated an entire sales lots in the city of Calgary. 2012, there was storms coming through, and they're very busy mitigating the hail by spraying the silver nitrate, which makes all the water coagulate and drop prior to coming over the city. In the same token, though, 2012, Okotoks, which is west of the city, got annihilated by a storm and flooded everything out. Coincidence? Well, there was a lot of talk about that, but it seemed nobody would admit to what was happening around then.
Right.
But it seems to be common knowledge with a lot of the people that were there. Cloud seeding was taking effect during that time frame.
Yeah, and I see they do have a lot of clients. See, there's Weather Modification Incorporated, and then, there's Weather Modification Association. I mean, these are companies. They have clients, and they're pretty open about their clients, and a lot of their clients go around the world, many countries. So, yeah, their clients buy their service to modify the weather at a certain time. But also, like you said, there's another side to that coin. Someone else is possibly going to be affected by that weather modification, so that you, or whomever the client is, could have a sunny day, so to speak.
Well, let's look at it this way. I got a map here, and it shows how many places, and there's right near Fresno, east of Fresno in the mountains, there's snowpack augmentation. East of Sacramento in the mountains, snowpack augmentation. Utah, Salt Lake City, Boise, Idaho, these are all snowpack augmentations by creating a lot of snow there. There's rain augmentation. Okay, what if this exact same scenario was to take place on the battlefield? They can go in and make a clear day, so there's a line of sight visibility. Okay, now you have clear line of sight of your enemy. But if your enemy is coming through the forest and they want that, the enemy to have a difficult time, they can make it rain on the enemy. It's that can become a warfare.
It is.
This was studied. This goes all the way back to the Vietnam War, when on Ho Chi Minh Trail they seeded the clouds so extremely heavily, and it got so muddy, and the enemy could not get away because they were being sucked in with rain. I know one of my friends was over there for quite some time. They made the situation so terribly difficult for their enemy, it was used as a weapon. Can it happen anywhere else? Of course it can. Is this the amount of knowledge that we have by doing our research online here? And if this is our public information, how much of it is out there that is not public?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
most of the time, a lot of these technologies are decades, multiple decades, in deep testing before it's rolled out to any of us at this point in time.
and going back to the same document, the Air Force 2025 one, which the 2025 is just a milestone date for when they want to meet this technology within the document, but they're telling where they are now and then where they want to go. I mean, they say a global, precise, real-time, robust, systematic weather modification capability would provide war-fighting sinks with a powerful force multiplier to achieve military objectives. And that's just one sentence within this 52-page. And
What was this document dated?
let me see. This is,
I believe it was right at the very top of the document. 1996, was it?
yep, August 1996.
And since 1996, telecommunications in the public sector has changed over 4 times and has exponentially grown. At the date we're at now, the smartphones that we hold double in potential speed, capacity, and usage every 18 months. This is a public sector technology. And if in 20 years this can happen here, what has the corporations, as in DARPA, Boston Dynamics, and other facilities, how much have they grown and done? I don't even know. But if I know the public sector has done this much, I can guarantee the private sector has probably done twice as much.
Oh, yeah. Toyota actually just started a new sub-company called Toyota Advanced Research Company. They just bought out Boston Dynamics from Google, and now Toyota has that technology, and they have some things that they want to do with that. But that's a little besides the point. But I don't doubt that there's lightning propagation technology out there, and
there's lightning mitigation already, and lightning mitigation is part of the process to eliminate forest fires. They've started some, but they haven't gotten great results on lightning mitigation. But propagation, yes, it's easier to create static within the air by drying it out.
What type of frequencies and how directed would the frequencies have to be to actually create, say, a really hot point at one point in the air? Say if you had 3 antennas or 3 towers, and you had 3 antennas equal space apart, and you place these antennas in the middle, what type of frequencies would you have to create something that could actually cook something?
Interesting question. First off, power density would have to be extremely high. Let me just open something here. The power density is an interesting design because the RF the way it's made, it's a combination of an electrical field and a magnetic field combined to make this broadcast. So to get something at a specific point in the air, there has to be something within the air to heat. The air itself does not necessarily heat up. If there was an object, if there was water, if there was a particle or something that would absorb it, that's the heating point. You can shine a laser through the air. It does nothing until it hits the other end. When it hits an object, that's when the laser's effect takes place. Very similar to frequencies. If there was something in the air that, or any end point where this hits, it takes effect at that single point. So the only thing that's going to carry potency to at a distance in the air would probably have to be a very, very high frequency and a very high power output. And when they're combined, the frequencies would have to be almost exactly the same frequency, so it would multiply at that point.
Well, we've noticed when they're spraying, you talked about heating. There has to be something to heat. When they spray heavily, it warms everything up. It's like you would think it would do the opposite.
Well, it's like the heat's trapped down here because it can't escape the metal particulates.
It would probably be trapped underneath, for one.
Yeah.
And two, the particle in there itself could also heat. And as the particle heats, it reflects the sun rays away. And this is part of the program of anything to do with, now personally I don't like the term chemtrails, but let's just call it a spraying or seeding of some sort. So if the clouds are seeded to some extent, it would reflect the sunlight away. This is called light mitigation. There's other terminologies along with this as well. But as it reflects that away, the heat is actually trapped underneath, basically causing a greenhouse effect.
But we're not the ones causing it. They are when they spray it.
And I've seen a lot of the times that there's not even a cloud that they're seeding. Sometimes they're actually creating the clouds.
It can be completely blue sky, and they just white the whole thing out.
There's always moisture in the air, unless you're over Death Valley, right? But there's always moisture in the air. And here's something that makes me wonder. Why aren't we pulling water out of the air in places like California, the drought area? It's so readily available, but it's being sprayed over top. Let's use the terminology that Weather Modification Inc. does. They go up and they spray dry ice. Carbon dioxide is what they're saying. So if they were to go up and spray carbon dioxide, it is ice cold. As it's sprayed out, it makes all the air around it start to cool. And as it starts to cool, it condenses, creating a cloud effect. Now, if there's, I don't know if they put anything else in there. I can't guess because I honestly don't know if there's other chemical in there outside of this, but I have read some write-ups, some papers, where the jet engines themselves, when it burns the fuel, it produces a sulfuric acid. The sulfuric acid coming out of the exhaust, as it cools, it transforms and changes into more of a carbon effect. During that time frame of heat exchange and the release in the chemical exchange, it creates a lot of carbon that's superheated. That can also leave trails behind that are chemically enhanced through the type of fuel that the jet airplane burns, basically creating more long clouds.
Yeah. And some of this, a lot of this, is public knowledge, and weathermodification.com, that's a pretty telling website name. and it's just out there for everyone to see. And going to that website, it lays out everything. It blew me away. It blew me away once I seen it. It tells you what types of planes they use. It has photographs of the attachments that they have for aerosolization. They have flares that they'll drop down into clouds, which sometimes when you think you see thunder, it's possible that they actually just dropped a flare inside of a cloud to actually create a storm.
So for public knowledge, what's this website called again?
That's weathermodification.com. And there's
And
also...
anybody can search it up. If anybody wonders or questions if there's any sort of, some sort of conspiracy here, it's there. Look for yourself. It's the most obvious thing that any website. This is owned by a very, very large company in North Dakota that contracts around the world for their purpose.
And you wonder where they're getting all of these particulates and chemicals that they're spraying. I mean, someone's got to be making an awful lot of money off of all the chemicals that they're putting out there.
I would say a lot. There's a lot of recycling that goes on, and the recycling programs, somebody must be purchasing a whole lot of scrap parts to create, whether it's aluminum or silver nitrate. I don't know how silver nitrate is made, but that's one of the most common components.
Well, I wanted to tie in one thing real quick, because a lot of people have chemical toxicity and don't even know it. And I was watching this series called Betrayal, and it was about autoimmune disease and how people, even if they don't have any symptoms yet, basically everyone's affected in some way. And one of the doctors was sharing how environmental toxins are the leading cause of disease. And it's only increasing in the amount of chemicals that they're going to use. He used a number of 74 billion pounds of chemicals being used a year, and that it was going to double in use by 2024. I thought that was staggering.
See, now we see
on that topic.
We see that date again, 2025. She said 2024. It seems to be some type of milestone. And also, I've heard a lot. Kimberly had, had some documents talking about telecommunications and electronic breakthroughs in the year 1996, too. And then you said that, Scott. So,
Yeah.
But, the chemical toxicities. A lot of people are really sensitive to the chemicals.
Well, the thing is, they don't even know that they have it. It's not till these symptoms, some sort of autoimmune symptoms. What's happening, what they say, is that these chemicals are binding to tissues in our body, and then it's looked at by our immune system as a foreign body, and then the body starts attacking parts of itself, and that is causing...
If you were to talk to your doctors,
Mm-hmm.
or a general in the medical field, the amount of people with respiratory problems has skyrocketed in the last 15, 20 years. I myself have to deal with adult onset asthma. Asthma being one of the leaders. Now so many people, doctors are prescribing inhalers like they're candy. There's just so many people who now have to use the emergency inhalers or a daily medical inhaler. I was the healthiest guy in the world for so many years, so active, and a couple times when I went right to the West Coast, I ended up getting really sick, and it was always a lung infection. And in the end run, it turned into pneumonia and asthma. Also, now going back into the towers, when we're high on a mountain and we deal with a very tall tower, we run our ropes all the way top to bottom. And you tell me, anytime you see spiders that fly, I've never seen flying spiders, especially when it's up to 200 to 300 feet tall. But somehow, a rope that runs top to bottom seems to be collecting spider webs on it. We'd run it all the way up, and it runs through the rigging blocks, run it all the way down. 10, 15 minutes later, there's a bunch of spider webs on it.
Wow.
Or are those spider webs?
What could they be?
Right. And I was a skeptic about that myself. Absolute skeptic. I saw this online. I saw people talking about it. I called BS until I'm the one pulling the rope, and I'm going, what the heck is all over my hands? And why are there spider webs 200 feet in the air?
Yeah.
Spiders don't climb that
So,
high.
well, not normally like this when you're on top of a mountain and there's a breeze. They don't just come up into nowhere. And if so, I think we would see some sort of insect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see anything?
Nope. Yeah, lots of trails in the sky. And then this cobwebs on the rope. Now, again, I can't say what it is. I don't know. But I found it very fascinating that I saw pictures about it previously, and then I actually see this happening on our ropes that you run up in the air. To me, it was just shocking.
Well, I believe it. I have as well seen those photos. I haven't seen what you've seen on a mountain, though. That would be quite eerie. It's kind of eerie just hearing it.
What were they saying, and what do you think this stuff is? I mean,
The only thing I can say is by feeling it in my hands, obviously being very busy, I didn't really spend time to collect it, but I got pictures and felt it in my hands. And normally when you feel a spider web, there's a certain amount of stickiness to it. All spiders are built that way. But this was, it felt more like, I don't know, some kind of synthetic fiber. It was like a synthetic spider web because it broke easier and it was not sticky. Don't know how it got there, but it was in the air.
do you know what they were, I mean, do you think this is the kind of stuff that people are inhaling?
I mean, definitely. I mean, if it's going to collect on his rope, then definitely people are going to inhale it, and more gallons is what, fibers in your bloodstream, or
like fiber optics.
Yeah, fibers building. What if these fibers can actually build themselves when given the environment within the human body? What if they could actually start to build themselves?
I really have, I'm blown away, and I don't know what to say about this because to me it's so foreign. But if it's in the air and it's collecting on a rope to the point that it can collect fibers up to 2 or 3 feet long, wow.
Yeah,
No wonder I was getting sick.
Yeah, exactly. I did collect, I do have a specimen, but I couldn't find anybody to test it to tell me what was in it. I basically called a couple of labs multiple times and never got any response from anybody. So maybe that's on a list of do not test subjects.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't shock me.
But yeah, I mean, all this stuff is related. I mean, when you take it and compartmentalize it, it becomes, most people are only focused on certain areas in their field of expertise, but when you start putting pieces together, you see people getting sick, an increase of disease. You start correlating this stuff to the stuff that they're spraying in the air. We have to breathe, right? And we're healthy, and then all of a sudden, I take this back to my personal experience in 2007, and I saw that I got sick, and a whole bunch of people got sick at the same time. I didn't really know about the whole chemical aerosol, the aerosol stuff at that time, but when I started to look back and how what I came down with, basically, it didn't make any sense. Like, I was having symptoms of sinus infections, but I didn't really have a sinus infection, and until I turns out something was causing allergies, which was causing a reaction that seemed like a sinus infection, but I relate it back to, I think it was the chemicals at that time they were spraying in the air. And I didn't know anything about this stuff at this time. I'm just looking back on my own personal experience, and now you're saying, that you were healthy, and then all of a sudden working around this environment, all of a sudden you come down with something that makes no sense, and so many other people are just full of toxins and these chemicals that they're constantly spraying all the time. I mean, it angers me when I go out for a run to see a beautiful blue sky turn completely white full of chemicals, and I have no say in it, and I have to be affected by breathing in it.
Right. And anyone outside long enough, just stay outside for a couple of hours, you could actually watch it happen. You can actually see the plane, see the aerosolization, and watch the cloud turn from a stream into a cloud. And especially
now, on that point, there are some differences between exactly what you're saying and another plane at the same altitude. Normally a plane at the wingtip will cause a lot of disruption, and at an exact certain temperature and there's certain humidity, it will create a contrail. But a contrail will dissipate because it is simply moisture in the air, and it does not grow in size. It is that size as it's made, and it will shrink in size and dissipate, whereas what you're talking about actually expands in size and spreads across the sky as opposed to dissipating at all.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well put there. Yeah.
But I'd like to kind of connect some more dots on this stuff as far as, okay, now we know that this stuff can enhance communication, it can disrupt communication and such, and then pulling this stuff into the technology of 5G, and I'll just pull it into the agendas and how they want to automate these things. They want to further connect man-machine with us constantly being tethered to technologies. You got people wearing stuff that now reads their vitals, and that stuff's being fed and back into potentially profiling us into this system. I mean, it feels to me a lot like the whole Terminator series, where they have just this machines are reading everything, and that might sound far-fetched to some people, but when you look at the technology that is going on right now and how fast they're speeding it up, and that you got self-driving cars, and as you mentioned, I think in our last interview, you heard about a self-driving truck, and even like Uber is supposed to be having self-driven, cab service now. I mean, it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right with where they, transhumanists want to, build to move us into avatars and such. It just feels like this stuff, this technology moving as fast as it is part of that agenda.
It is. It's a slow conditioning. You start off with a big bulky computer, and now we have computers in our hands, and now we have identification cards that are implanted into the palm of our hands. Also, cyborgs are here. There are people that have signed up in the name of curing or helping alleviate the symptoms of their disease, whether it be Parkinson's or dementia or severe mental disorders, deep brain stimulating microchips that are connected to an outside aperture that does receive frequencies, from, I don't know who the the company that would, that they would sign up with to, or what antenna company would be, in control of this, but it is there. There are companies like Galvani Bioelectronics. Bioelectronics may be a new term for people, but it's the integration of putting and implanting electronics into one's body, either for medical purposes or just, quote, enhancement. And one thing companies are wanting to do and be on the forefront of are creating neural prosthetics, like new memory. memory for the brain enhancement. And these are implants. And when you have an electronic implant, either it could be self-sustaining, either powered by the movement of the human body, or it can have an outside receiver that would be turned on, used by some type of antenna nearby. And that sounds kind of unhealthy, that part of it. And
on exactly that, people who have diabetes have always had this trouble of whether they're injecting insulin or whether they have to take sugar. Well, it's commonplace now that there's a device that is put internally in the body, and they have another piece strapped to the exterior.
Yeah.
Well, your exterior can be monitored via your smartphone, and interior, it monitors your blood sugar levels, and it will automatically release a certain amount of insulin, and you can monitor it through your phone. So that's one of those technologies that's implanted and external at the same time. Recently, I just saw one where this is the most far-fetched, bizarre thing. Wouldn't have believed it, except I saw the documentary. They're testing ways for fighter pilots and how they can transfer their knowledge and skill to another person. So the I almost want to say victim, the next patient or student puts on the helmet with all the neural sensors on his head and flies a plane. But in doing so, they are learning that they can literally transfer the skills from one pilot into a student pilot. And the student pilot learns so much faster because he has the memories or experience of an experienced pilot. I would never have believed that, except, wow.
Yeah, that is bizarre. That's what that would be called is non-invasive brain-to-brain interface. So, there are two categories. There's invasive, which is directly going inside into the brain via an electronic device, an electronic electrode going into the brain. And then there's
Isn't this like the Jetsons?
And then there is non-invasive, which is like a helmet. But these scientists, I call them mad scientists, they prefer invasive, but they have to get the public's approval, introduce non-invasive, like the headwear that you're talking about, and doing the brain-to-brain interface.
And in the way that they play this up is like, that there's always this cool factor where it's got to be something around helping a medical condition. But they never talk about the nefarious ways that they could use this technology.
Right, like fly your drone with your brain, right? Control your drone with your thoughts.
Well,
now it seems like if there's just an imagination, they're going to find a way to create whatever someone can imagine. That's bizarre. I haven't heard much about the wireless transfer from a brain to an exterior antenna. That's new, and I need to do some research on that topic.
Yeah. I would consider that non-invasive brain-machine interface. That's what that would be. But they definitely, and I was looking at something maybe a week ago, is with drones, they're getting pretty in-depth into the research and development when it comes to drones. One being completely autonomous drones, but that's really, really sketchy when you start to go there. I don't like drones anyways, and then there's the semi-autonomous drones, ones that can be turned on to control itself and then turned off to where it can be remotely controlled by a human. Military is now working on ways to implant a drone pilot with a chip where he can actually control either a robot carrier, but they prefer drones. They can either it be an autonomous aerial vehicle or a robot on the ground would be considered a bipedal drone. But these implants to control drones and robots and machines, that's not really cutting edge right now, but that's about the furthest that they're letting us know about right now.
Yeah.
You start connecting all these things into these networks, and you say you've got like this Falcon project and FiberNet, all cities. You have all this stuff interwoven and talking to each other. It's like the level of surveillance and potential control or targeting. It's just like, where can you go that you're not under some sort of spying ability that they have? And like I said, that leads me right into thinking about the whole, they make movies, to kind of tell you that these possibilities are there, but also at the same time they make it look like, oh, that's some futuristic, it's so far out there it couldn't possibly ever happen, conditioning for people not to even think about it. But when you really dig in and you see these technologies and you start connecting all these pieces, it's alarming to say, this stuff.
One of the best movies that I found to be fairly realistic, and I say that loosely, because there are some parts of the movie that are rather fictional, but as far as our topics here, the movie called Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye was a movie where a person was particularly targeted because he had information and ability to work into networks. And there's some famous characters in here. They were targeted, they were watched, followed, and yes, your cell phone can be an ultimate tracker, just like your credit cards when you use it. It leaves a trace. Every kind of this technology leaves a trace somewhere, somehow. Heat sensors. We have the police helicopters that fly over that have heat sensors, and everyone sees this on TV, but they can hunt a person down by just simply their body heat. Okay, if it can detect motion, it can detect body heat, through helicopters can trace your phones, where you're all going. Well, you better not have anything to hide, because you can't hide it anymore.
Correct.
Exactly. I mean, even, the chip technology that they're forcing now, it's like you can't, if you get a credit card or a debit card or anything updated, it comes with the chip. I tried with the bank. I'm like, I don't want a chip in my card. And so I stamped it out, and, they won't, I asked for one without a chip, they won't do it. They're forcing you into chip technology and digitizing everything. It's just more tracking, tracing, and, it's a threat to our freedom of, having privacy. I mean, even
actually, where I am, many of the point of sales do not even accept a magnetic strip. It's either tap and pay or using the chip. Magnetic strips are becoming a thing of the past in some areas.
What were you telling about the Amazon stores are doing now?
Oh, yeah, there's Amazon just launched its first on-the-ground store. It's called Amazon Go. They don't have any workers. They have no cashiers. It's self-sustaining, sustained by artificial intelligence. So you walk in.
No way.
You walk in. You scan your Amazon Go app as you walk in. You go in, pick up whatever items you want, put them in your bag, and walk out. When you walk out, all of your products are scanned as you walk out. So not the metal detectors, but the scanners to say at the pharmacy. So you walk in, you walk out. Say if you took something from them, the alarm goes off. It's the same.
Just read the magnetic barcodes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's the same type of technology except integrated to making these stores completely ran by AI. So, I mean, yeah, it's called Amazon Go.
Well, that's just an example of what the technology can do, but, the key herein is what do they do with it from there? I mean, you are completely profiled when they digitize everything, because everything is trackable and traceable. They know what you're reading, what you're buying, where you're going, when you're doing it, how often you're doing it. I mean, then you can completely create a profile about what people do and where they go. And they know what you read and that kind of stuff. You can become a target just by what you read.
Yep. What your opinions are, and if you voice it publicly. There used to be something called freedom of speech, but apparently there's not that, not quite the same anymore. With our technologies that we have nowadays, I have seen, and in many of our banking systems, Vancouver, British Columbia seems to be fairly advanced. The banks around here have apps on the phones where you pay by phone by simply swiping your phone across the pay pad, whether it's Interact, whether it's a debit machine. You just swipe your phone across there and it automatically draws it out of your bank. Therefore, your wallet eventually can become your phone. Your bank cards and all that are stored within your phone, and using the NFC antenna, your near field communication antenna, you just swipe that across and it reads whatever you have set up in your phone. You just click OK as you walk out and you paid for it.
I do not like the sound of that.
Well, you see what it's doing? It's slowly integrating the chip or all of your information, your identification, your credit card. First of all, the ID is a card. Your money is put onto a credit card now. You have your bank card, whatever. Eventually, some people in the name of convenience are going to want that all onto one card, except they're not going to want to swipe it anymore. And in the name of security, they're going to want it on them at all times, that they will integrate it into their bodies. That's what some people that sell themselves.
Well, that's where they're heading with it. They want to chip everyone. So that
some people will sign up for that.
Sadly. Well,
make it desirable. People will want it. No matter what it is, if you make it desirable enough, they will want it and they will take it. How many people do you know play Candy Crush? Candy Crush.
I don't, but I know a lot of people. I mean,
okay.
I don't.
Well, it's like
Millions.
The
literally millions of people play Candy Crush. Now, I just picked one single app. You make it desirable. If you make it desirable enough, they will come. They will want it. They will spend on it.
Talk about a waste of time, and we don't have a television, which we call the weapon of mass distraction. If people aren't thinking and are constantly distracted by things that have no value, then most people aren't even going to question anything or see any of this stuff.
And exactly what you just said right there, that is why nothing has to be hidden anymore. They're all distracted. Now, you're talking about a zombie apocalypse. Sorry, it's already here. People are so distracted, they don't care about the truth. They don't care about what's out there. Everybody is asleep in their own life. There's very few people who are awake enough to even look around and open their mind to go, is this acceptable? Well, of course it is. The Internet says it is. It told me it is. Facebook says it's true. The Internet says it's true. It's good then. They don't stop to look at things themselves enough to make a personal choice. Personal choice, I don't know why it seems so many people have just allowed themselves to be told what they should and shouldn't do.
Because
that's where a huge problem is.
It's a conditioning. It's a slow conditioning, Scott. I mean, we see it. Luckily, I have a family that's awake and able. I'm able to talk about these things, and they see it too. But most people, even if you do even try to bring it up, they just go into they either like, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. I like my world. I like my distractions. I want to come, I just want to, get up, go to work, come home, watch my, distractions and go to sleep. And it's like there's no thinking. There's no critical thinking going on.
Pretty much.
It's dangerous to those that are trying to condition us not to think. or speak or, share these things with others. And that's primarily why my Facebook page is so centered. Like, no, I have like, almost 3,000 friends, and if I make a post of a picture of me, I'll get some activity. If I put a post of anything like we're talking about today, zero. No one sees it.
Yeah, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with, when used responsibly, using a computer or watching something on TV.
To serve the public.
Right. See, when being conscious and awake and using those tools for a good manner, for actually learning something or contributing knowledge to others, then they can be good tools. Like, I like documentaries, but I don't watch them that often. Not all TV is bad, but
of course not.
probably 97% of it is. It's just junk. TMZ.
Because it's useless distraction.
Yes, exactly. And, it's okay if someone wants to break down and have a little useless distraction, but have some good critical thinking stuff in there as well. It's a good, happy balance.
Sci-fis are kind of like research projects. If I think, like, when I watch a sci-fi, it's like doing research.
Well,
if you can watch it with an open mind, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's rare that I get to do that.
Well, it reminds me of the movie I watched. Oh my gosh, Tom Cruise. What was the movie? I'm trying to remember it now. But it had that technology in there about
Minority Report.
Yeah, Minority Report about. And I'm seeing the signs of this stuff again, where they're talking about how they could read the minds of people, so that they might have a thought in the police state. They could prevent the crime before it happens. And when I saw that movie, I was like, they have that technology. I know they have technology. I was like, I didn't know any of this stuff that I know now.
Well,
it's just an intuition of like, I know there's something more to this than just a movie.
Talk about profiling.
Oh,
when you talk about profiling and the use of this technology, I'll give you an example that people would have to actually try, and I recommend anyone who's listening to actually try this. Pick a topic that you do not normally talk about, nor you've researched. Somebody in the city who never ever goes mountain biking. Choose someone with you, put your phone down, do not do anything with it, but talk about mountain biking. More than once, like a few days in a row. Next thing you know, you're going to start getting advertisements on Facebook or wherever you surf. You're going to be getting advertisements about mountain biking because the cell phone device does listen and pick up on what we're saying. Talk about buying a house. Like, literally, without searching anything about buying houses, talk about searching about buying a house in a specific city. You do this 3-4 times, you'll get those advertisements back about it. Now, if you're doing the exact same thing on about committing crime, you talked about it. This device is listening to you. You're planning something out, and it's listening. The police could come and prevent a crime before it happens, exactly like Minority Report, because the devices that we carry now listen to us well enough that if we're talking criminal activity, it automatically, through the encryption system that these phones all operate on, filter out specific words. Now, at work, the material that we release for a job is called a BOM, B-O-M, a bill of material. Now, many people in warehousing use this term. They actually have to change these words in some places so that they don't talk using that word in our sentences because it automatically raises a red flag. Start saying those words, talking about presidents, talking about terrorism, and you'll be singled out really quick. And your phone gets monitored. If you start looking for materials, you'll be monitored. Now, something that some people know, other people don't believe unless they're shown. There's a search function on all these smartphones where people shouldn't use, but they do it while they're driving, or while they're just too lazy to text. You hit the voice automation, and you talk to your phone and do a search.
Yeah.
So when you do that, whatever you search, your voice recording is saved. Google saves it. Whatever operating system on saves it for month after month after month. And it's theoretically used to improve its ability to read your voice and help you search better. It gives you suggestions of how you're searching, what to search for. You can go in and turn that off. You can go back and play your own voice back to you from 6 months ago when you searched for a bag of marbles. And you'll hear your own voice repeating it back to you. And that can be easily done on any Samsung that I know of. I don't do Apple products. I don't like them, don't want to. But I've gone in and turned it off on my phone because I just don't want these recordings being out there.
I don't either.
So if that can be done, that easily, then it's just embedded within the software itself, what do you think the police hardware can do?
All right. I have I have some beef with Google. You know, just going to be open about that. See, I think we're talking about Siri and other applications like Siri. And yes, your information is stored and it is uploaded to, say, if your voice recording, say your Siri was owned by Google, it goes to Google. It goes to your profile. And when when checking the I agree to all of the terms and conditions, I actually read the terms and conditions, Google's. They have permission, all of Google and all of Google's subsidiaries, which is about 120 right now, have access to all of your information when signing the I agree to the terms and conditions. So we have to look at, with all the information that's collected on every individual, look at all of Google's subsidiaries, including Boston Dynamics, the humanoid robots. So, do you think that it would be a good idea to actually give every bit of Google, including these robot humanoids, your information?
Because that can create an AI that learns everything that people do normally in a sociological situation. AI can read all this data, interpret the data, and in theory, act as a human.
It could, and the AI, if it became smart enough, could deem certain humans threats to its own existence, possibly.
Well, if it just simply runs a script that filters alarm words, and when the trigger words are found, that person could be a threat. And, okay, that person's bad enough, he has to get removed. Pretty simple, really.
Well, we were talking about the movie Transcendence. We went to see that after, we were talking about, with this whole AI system, and if basically right now it needs some hands and feet to build it, and that's part of the reasons why everything's so compartmentalized. People might be working next to each other and not even really know what they're working on.
Yes.
Obligates our universities, to do their dirty work. So our kids might be building something that they're not quite sure how it's going to be used. And obviously, if they knew how it was going to be used, they wouldn't be doing it. So that's why it has to be highly compartmentalized. But we're talking about, okay, if AI wants to basically have its hands and feet be the people, and once it gets smart enough and learns enough to start building itself, it doesn't need people anymore. I mean, that's.
I think there was a movie called, is it The White House Has Fallen? Something like that?
I'm not familiar with that one.
There was one where basically there was an AI who took over the city, and they were trying to protect the president who was supposed to die. It would go and lock all the doors, mag locks on the doors, could control the traffic lights, which are all interconnected through the central control system. Cars have computer systems in them. Today, with the technology we have, if an AI was present or a controller with the ability to think as fast as a central AI would, could control any particular person through computer systems, through traffic lights, through wireless technologies, cell phones, data tracking systems, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing today is already monitored from your hydrometer, your gas supply system, your car location on most newer cars, your cell phones, your banking systems. People just think they have freedom.
So would you say that that technology is here now?
Absolutely.
Yep, and they only want to make it faster and smarter, which, again, as I say, does that not look like, AI having us build it until it has all the information it needs, and then it just doesn't need people anymore?
Right, it doesn't know how to reproduce yet, so it needs human hands and our assembly line until it learns how to self-replicate and reproduce.
Once it has its own robots in a manufacturing facility, that probably wouldn't take too long.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we went into great detail in one of the articles that we have on our website. We're always adding to it kind of a roadmap of, where, well, basically Berkeley talks about it, and they call it swarm. And, swarming us with technology and making us addicted to the technology so that we are constantly interacting with it, which is simply feeding it more information, which is more profiling, monitoring, and possibly controlling what we're doing. I'm going to.
So as you're going along this here, as our discussion continues, one particular year keeps popping up, 2025.
Yes.
If you look at a website that is called deagle.com, you've probably seen this one, DEAGEL.com. They have a list of countries, and they forecast the population of these countries for the year 2025. Well, there's also something called Agenda 25.
Mm-hmm.
So many similarities, all pointing to the same year, the same number, the same date. And if we're all pointing at this website, deagle.com, is a military-based and discusses military operations. You can search up almost any country in the world and find out all their military stock supplies of equipment, what they've purchased in the recent time frame. It's pretty distinctive and pretty intensive. In there, this list of countries, forecast for 2025, shows from the year 2015 to 2025, which is only a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
It appears, and I would say they're fairly accurate, being that this is come from a military-based website.
Mm-hmm.
It appears there's going to be some massive event. Now, is this all pointing to the same similar type of thing? I really hope to God that this is not an AI. But if you look at it, let's pick out something that's rather dramatic, just for the point of discussion. Many of your listeners are going to be in the U.S. In 2015, the year 2015, there's 33 inhabitants per square kilometer with a population of 321 million people in the U.S. The forecast for 2025, there will only be 6 inhabitants per square kilometer and a gross population of only 61 million. So from 321 million to 61 million is a substantial depopulation.
Yeah.
But now just we'll look at some other countries. Look at Pakistan. Why does their population grow from 199 million to 221 million? I have some concerns about this. You know, with the recent change of presidency that's about to take effect, everyone's been talking about what's up and coming, why this, oh, if Clinton gets in, there's going to be war, if Trump gets in, there's going to be war, and all this jazz. I don't know. I kind of suspect, this is not a professional opinion, but I kind of suspect no matter what happens, this is all steered toward one particular event of war no matter what happens.
Yeah, war. I mean, they want war. I mean, that's part of depopulation is done best through war. I mean, that has been their model forever. I mean, now they've got the technology to hit us at different angles, you know, including, you know, but not limited to the war on food, the war on air, the war on water, the war on our minds. I mean, it's not just the physical soldiers in a battlefield. It is literally the war on the world of humanity.
And now that we have this discussion that people can be tracked at any point in time, it's so much easier to track a mass population, whether the population is all within one city or if the population is moving, as in what's happening over in the Middle East right now, where mass populations are uprising and moving into different areas of the world. All their movement can be tracked because all these refugees, oddly enough, they're poor, broke refugees, but the majority of them have cell phones on them.
Wow.
Now that they all have cell phones on them, okay, go ahead, move. It don't matter. They're all still the same as everything else, a number.
It sounds like, you know, when they start moving people around like that in groups, it just sounds like test practice. You know, it's like, how do we move the masses? You know, how do we move the herd?
Well, don't you think people had learned from what happened back in the World War I and II? Remember when all the Jews were put onto trains and mass population was moved that way? There was no learning from the past here. This is just a repeating cycle of the same thing over again. Pull all the guns away from the people, allow populations to move or herd them, and then you have absolute control. Absolute control because they have no way to defend themselves. They know where they are at every given moment, and you have control over them because you can see where every dollar is being spent. Very interesting.
Well, there's also, recently there's been a war on cash, so that they're trying to remove cash so that we have no privacy. I mean, that's even in the Bible where you can't, if you aren't chipped, you have no way of, you know, exchanging with people because that the system is all about being digitized, and if you can't have a private, you know, trade through cash, now if you aren't just doing it privately through an old trade system, if you want to buy food or something like that, then if you don't get into their systems, you know, get marked by the beast, if you will, then they're trying to take that liberty, that freedom away from us of having any kind of privacy. So it's scary to me, that hearing that some countries have taken cash away already. I think it was...
I'll admit, I rarely carry cash on me myself. I rarely carry cash because of the simple convenience of you just tap your card and go. Done.
Same here, but the scary thing is if it's conditioning us, and if they take it away altogether and you can't go to the store and buy something without traceability, then like it's just...
What if somebody just turned your card off?
Everything you do is known.
Yep, and if your card was just turned off, you have no say over it. All of a sudden, because you don't have cash, you're broke and homeless because someone turned your card off.
Yep. Exactly. So you can see how that system can be used. I mean, it starts out in the you know, the cool or convenient zone, but it can just easily, whoops, you know, whoops, we made a mistake. You're broke. You got nothing. It's gone. You got no. You don't have gold or anything that has any value. It's literally digital, and if they decide that, they just want to erase the record of whatever you've earned and it's just gone because they've targeted you to be a problem, yeah, there you go. Learn to live off the land. If you can get anything that hasn't been, toxified. But, we see how it's sped up. It's scary to us how the technology is, how fast it's moving. And more
it doesn't scare me.
I mean, more than anything,
I just try to be as knowledgeable about it and, know where to draw the line.
Well, I mean, I think more than anything, Scott, what we always try to do is focus on solutions. And, if people are aware, if they are made aware that they are being tracked, maybe they're reduce their app usage, or they'll reduce the amount of activity where they are being tracked. And I think last time that we were on, you said that if you really want to turn the signals out that are going in and out of your phone off altogether, so they can't hear or read, or then just wrap it in foil.
Yeah.
And
knowledge is power. Knowledge, no matter how you look at it, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
If people learn about these systems and you know what you're dealing with, you can handle it. Whether you pull your battery, whether you simply wrap it in foil, because that's just a little miracle trick, knowledge is power, however you want to deal with it. If you don't want to be tracked and you want to pull the battery, you're free. If you want to actually just disconnect from the system altogether, that is a possibility. It's just hard to go without bank accounts nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we ourselves have been deciding to go to a smaller bank and get away from the big banks.
Wells Fargo.
Yeah, well, there's, you're seeing a lot of stuff come to the surface now of some of the things that they're doing. In fact, so many of these banks, Wells Fargo being one of them, are funding the Dakota pipeline.
Yep.
And so that's, I think a lot of people need to know about that. So let's pull our money from these people who are hurting people just for profits, and they're funding this stuff, and that just sickens us all. I mean, a lot of people know about what's going on out there, but they have no idea that the money they're putting in their bank is actually going to, further this pipeline issue.
Well, let's order a mass boycott on all of these banks, and I'll provide the list in the video. I'll provide the list of banks, and I'm initiating a boycott on all of them right now. I'm not kidding.
I know you're not. Well, the easiest way to get people to move is to make it easy for them. So that's why we want to, help throw out some simple, easy solutions, so they have something that they can easily move into action with.
Yep.
If you make it easy for someone just to sign a petition, to, have a little packet where they can go out and hand out things to people locally, just to inform people. But you got to make it easy for them, or they're not going to do it. They'll just glaze over and go on to their next distraction.
Yeah.
I don't know, what other suggestions might you have, Scott, for how people could protect themselves?
Be prepared.
Yeah,
More than anything else, be prepared for having some cash on hand at all times. Be prepared with your personal food and water supply. Be prepared for a natural disaster of any kind, and that, along with knowledge, will make you prepared and a lot more alert for what's coming down the pipeline. No matter where we have our money, there's always the possibility of someone having oversight over it. If you have a certain amount with you at all times, then you're always prepared then. You're prepared for no matter what comes your way. And personally myself, I always have a number of cases of water in my shop. We always have a food supply. I always have a full set of camping gear and other protection, whatever I need, have that on hand, because I have control over myself. I do not have control over other parties. I do not have control over what they do, but I can control what I allow them to do to me, for me. I can protect my family and deal with myself, and that's one of the best things that anybody can do.
Yep, and then you remove fear and you have clearer thinking when you know that you have the basics, because
Right.
that's really, at the end of the day, you should have some sort of survivalist kind of information. I mean, I know that I recently read about there's a lot of weeds, natural weeds, that you can live off of. There was a guy that had literally lived off of weeds that grew naturally around his house for over a year, like dandelions, like a lot of those kinds of things that are natural. It would be really good for people, and we'll put up some resources where people can go read. If for some reason you could not get to a food supply, it might just be growing right around your home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I didn't know. As much as I look into these types of things, I did not know that that kind of stuff existed, and I think that's really important information to get to people in case something got weird.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I say, stay knowledgeable, keep increasing your knowledge, be collaborative, friendly, and, once you start to take control of your life, your own life, that's how things start to change. And if everyone took control of their own life, then there would be no battle here.
What do you mean by control their own life? Just really just removing a lot of the distractions and, having some basic knowledge of how to take care of themselves, just that takes the fear.
Oh, take control of your own mind, and
Being awake, being alert, and alert to what's going on around you,
Yeah.
so that you have control over what you do for yourself and your family, as opposed to being a follower and just a cog in the wheel. Too many people are just a cog in the wheel. They do what they're told. They do what the system says. This is the matrix, and they're part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate your time with us, Scott. We're going to continue these conversations because it's, as this technology continues to be forwarded in somewhat exponentially, we want to keep letting people know what's going on because of, as you said, between 2015 and 2025, and they just keep throwing that date out there.
Yep.
Like it's, this is something that's just going to happen, and you see that date so often. As we approach that date over the next 10 years, we need to know what's going on. And by having that knowledge, and maybe that will get people to back off on some of this technology a little bit and see like, whoa, maybe this isn't just convenience to me. Maybe this is, profiling me a little too much.
Yep, exactly. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, thanks, Scott. I'd like to stay in contact with you, and I'd say do a show once a year. I think that would be awesome. Or whenever.
Absolutely. Or whenever.
As technology changes, that's one of the reasons I like to stay in it, is because, well, if I'm not doing it, somebody else will be. So I might as well be kept up to date on everything that's happening, and very cautiously use my services to assist others.
That's what we're all here for, because we don't spend the time that we do looking at this stuff. It's really it's about being in service to humanity and putting the pieces together to give people a clear path to positive action so that they can protect themselves and their family. And that's what this is all about. So we really appreciate you taking your time with us today, and we'll have the interview up soon, and if there's any documents or anything that you would like to forward to us, we'll put links and things for people to get to on anything we talked about today that they might want to take a look at. And if you can think of any other ideas of how people could protect themselves, just give that to us, and we'll put it all up on the website, in the interview.
Yeah,
so.
let me get this right. That material you were talking about is called Galvacon. Is that right?
Yep.
Galvacon. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Buy it at your local Home Depot.
All right. Well, hey, we'll stay in contact. We very much appreciate it, Scott.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much.
You're very welcome. Have an awesome weekend. Enjoy the holidays.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone,
you too.
for listening. And we will be talking to you again soon. And have a blessed holiday, and we will talk to you all soon.